Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Firepower Gaming channel. And the second in our irregular series of Mentioned in Dispatches. And tonight we're joined again by Tom and Joe. And Tom's going to be chairing tonight. But before he kicks off, I'd just like to give a big thank you to all of our new subscribers that have come in over the course of the last few days. I put up a bit of a begging tweet and had a fantastic response from people, and the numbers have really shot up, and we're over 200 now, which I'm really pleased about. So without further ado, your host for this evening, Mr. Tom Egan.
All right, that's definitely the best introduction I've had in several months of standing fort and holding fort in any sort of environment. Certainly, I'll have to have a word with my students. But nevertheless, yeah, welcome everyone, and welcome back to, as Andrew said, our second of our very irregular series of video casts and touching on various topics related to hobby. And so what I might do in terms of the general run and gist of how these things go, at least how we've decided to do it, I think particularly for any of our newer viewers or listeners, that it might be good to give a very, very brief introduction. I'm sure they can go back and check episode 1 for the longer biographies, but maybe just a brief introduction. And then I'd say the first question that I'm going to pose to you both is that, given it's been more than 3 months since we've spoken last, what have you been up to from a hobby perspective? So what projects are sitting on your desk? What's garnered a bit of dust, perhaps? Where has your pound, or in my case, my euros, gone over the last number of months? And how has that been? So, Sir Andrew, I'll bounce back to you first. A brief introduction, sir. And then what have you been up to?
Hi, everybody. Well, I'm Andrew Beechner. I tweet under the handle of Dystad. I organise the Firepower channel. And I'm a bit of a hobby magpie, flitting without any real focus or intent from one project to another, seemingly at whim. And that's me.
Excellent. Very good. And you, Joseph, sir?
Yeah, I'm Joe Bilton. I am Joe_Wargamer on Twitter, and I am less of a magpie, more of a hoarding bird. I don't know, like a completionist bird, whatever bird that would be, some sort of turkey or something. And Thanksgiving as well, quite relevant to Turkey.
That is very relevant,
isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, and I play exclusively World War II, 28mm stuff, and I do a lot of terrain and things. That's I'm focused to World War II, but the full breadth of World War II.
Excellent. And I'm sure anyone who has been following your posts recently will be well versed with your terrain skills in terms of the level of detail and the skill with which you've been winding your way across the various terrain formats of the Second World War and posting accordingly make us all very, very jealous. Well, from my own perspective, obviously, my name's Tom Egan. I post under exactly the same name. There's no cloak and dagger there. It is what it is. I don't hide it. I embrace it.
Unlike Andrew, Dice Daddy. Yeah, not my dad. You know, exactly. I was so confused.
Yeah, I mean, this can be very, very confusing. No, it's all straightforward. It's all up front. And whilst I would have initially started and being terribly laser-like focused, much like my good friend Joe here, on the Second World War, and I still do that. I have over recent months, and I will unabashedly put my hands up and say that my hobby focus has broadened quite significantly, and I have begun to reach out into both many different scales, which has been an interesting excursion in its own right, and also into a number of different rule sets as well, which has been great fun. Yeah, okay, in terms of broadening that base of experience. In terms of my most regular game, and perhaps what I may or may not be most known for, at least more recently, is I've been very much driving virtual Space Hulk across the Twitter and indeed in some cases onto YouTube as well, with both a video and some sort of live stream. And I'm a big fan of purging Space Hulks and driving Space Marines around the place and having a lot of crack when we're doing it, with some, admittedly, brackets, a lot of expletives thrown in between, depending on how.
But you're going to say a lot of gene stealers, because that's
no, man, no. The gene stealers get wiped out when you start rolling those dice, so it's just leaves me with my expletives. But yeah, it is. It's terrible, Andrew, and I try so difficultly, but it all goes to pot as soon as they start rolling those dice. But in any case, that's definitely something to discuss, perhaps in another video episode. However, all Lal's introductions being said, so I think we last spoke in July, and I think the topic of conversation then was about getting into gaming, getting into wargaming, and certainly looking at it from a World War II perspective, and I suppose teeing up what we've been doing or who we are. But since then, we've had a number of different things happen, both in our respective locations. We've gotten back in paces to in-person gaming. We've still kind of done some virtual gaming, and that's, I suppose, maybe going to be the main topic of conversation later on, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to that. But so, like, in the last 3 months then, what's been the major focus of your hobby energies in terms of maybe a project or a period or a new game system that you've thrown yourself into? So maybe you, Joe, for the first one, what have you been up to for the last couple of months?
I guess actually a lot of my hobby stuff has been driven by magazine article things that I've been sort of like those sort of projects. So actually way back in April we started this, but then it went on. I was keen to make the house on Dead Man's Corner, so that the famous building north of Carentan, which is now a museum, and was the site of 101st Combat with Fallschirmjäger, and there was the famous burnt out Stuart tank that was there, and it wasn't burnt out, but it was dead anyway. And I was keen to make it, so I contacted War Bases back in the summer, and I said to them, do you have this kit, or could you make this kit, or sort of thing, and they were keen to do it. And so I started doing some research with them, and I contacted the museum and spoke to the manager there, and he gave me some photographs that hadn't been seen before of the back of the house, because nowadays there's I think it's a cinema or something, like a thing, like the back of the house.
There's an experience. There's an airborne experience at the back of it, big massive shed. Yeah.
So they've like hidden the actual original facade of the building and stuff. So I managed to get photographs of that before it was changed, and so then I worked with Martin at War Bases, and they created this kit, this like really accurate kit. And I got a copy of the kit, and I like did it up nicely on with polyfiller and whatever stuff, and did an article for War Game Soldier Strategy magazine, which is the current one, 117. So that was so a lot of my time was doing that, researching that, and building that and photographing it and stuff. I also then decided, while I had the sort of like article writing bug going, when Nick Too Fat Lardies was saying about any volunteers to write articles for their Christmas special thing, I thought, I will do that. And so my first initial idea was to do a tutorial for a German church. So I thought that'd be quite fun. So I got a War Bases church and I modified it. But then I was thinking, well, it'd be fun also to do a little, maybe one scenario, but then it ended up becoming a 5-table pint-sized campaign using that church. And I sort of like focused on the rear pocket, sort of like collapse, the collapse of the rear pocket and stuff. And so then I wrote an article which I've submitted to them for that. And then that led to the next thing, because I had done some maps for the pint-sized campaign. I'm hero at maps in my business working life, making D&D maps. And so I had made these maps for the thing. And then Richard at Too Fat Lardies contacted me and said, would you be interested in working with us to do maps for their supplements? And so then I've done the maps for the new O group, a 1940 France thing that came out. So the maps in there are my maps. Yes, so that was really fun, and I'm actually going to be working on them with them for a future thing. It might be secret, so I'm not going to say what.
Cloak and dagger. Okay, very good.
Secret stuff. So a lot of my stuff has been either making German buildings, photographs from my pint-sized campaign, or making Dead Man's Corner thing. I took part in Terrain Toba that Alex Sutherland had organised.
Oh yes,
Everyone did. Like, it was a huge response. It was an amazing response, and his video he's got on his channel is like half an hour of, like 800,000 photographs of people's stuff,
Brilliant.
I did a canal set for that with a lock. I did a French farmhouse based on a photograph that was there was a poll to decide which one to do, and did that one. What else? Look at my list. In terms of current projects, I'm all about the BEF for France, because our game on Sunday, Tom.
No pressure, Joe. No pressure.
Yeah, right. So I thought, I really want to kickstart my BEF for. So I started it. I lost track of time. Who knows? Sometime a few months ago, and then it had stalled because I was doing terrain for Terraintober and whatever stuff.
Okay.
And it was in the box, and it was just sort of waiting there. And I thought, I really want to get it finished. And so I last weekend decided that the game we'd have, Tom, would be BEF, and I would get a whole platoon and support done for Sunday and stuff.
In a week, more or less.
In a week. Do you know what? Actually, it's actually what I've got. Like what I had sprayed up was actually more like 2 platoons.
Okay.
And like 15 vehicles, and a lot of support. So I'm happy to say now I've got a full platoon done.
Brilliant.
And support and stuff, but I'm going to just try and knock off the rest while I'm in the BEF painting mood.
Excellent.
So yeah, that's my time. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that's like that. In fairness, that's some serious going here. We're bringing like structural architecture and engineering into the wargaming realm, really, like where we're recreating historical buildings. And for those of you that haven't seen the kit, you definitely need to go and Google the kit and the article, because it is fairly fantastic, let alone before we start talking about this canal, which hopefully isn't going to cause my Germans too many issues on
it's
Sunday.
It's going to cause a lot of issues.
Canalizing terrain. And we'll come back to this later on when we come back to the discussion. But excellent. Okay, that's some serious going. And so then to you, Andrew, what have you been up for the last couple of months?
Well, I certainly can't top that.
I don't think any of us can, Andrew, to be quite frank.
Congratulations, Joe. That's fantastic. I mean, to get more and more of your stuff published, and to actually start to appear in the Lardy supplements, that's just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that's good. That's
cheers. Nice. That's great. Well, I mean, I've been in I've been in a bit of a hobby fug over the course of the last sort of few months, I suppose, really. I worked on a big collaborative project over the vast majority of lockdown, which was my 15mm Napoleonics, my French for the Peninsula. And I did it with my wargaming buddy, hello Nige, and it was great fun to do, and it turned into an enormous project. But at the end of it, I've been a bit of a wet lettuce, really. I haven't really been able to kind of settle to anything in particular, really. So I've kind of focused on trying to get stuff finished. So I've finished off my Saxon Warband for Dux Britanniarum. Been doing some more 100 Years War stuff, although there's loads more of that to do. I started to refurbish my 6mm Cold War stuff, which I've got an American in the Soviet force and then a British one still to do. But they were my first project that I really kind of fell in love with. It was the project that really kind of got me back into wargaming. And so as a consequence, all the painting's rubbish, the basing's terrible. It's a fantastic collection, but I've just done them really, really badly. And I'm very keen to get back into that period. So I'm kind of refurbishing all those at the moment and determined to finish the British. By the same token, the 6mm ACW stuff, start to try to get that finished. Terraintober was a fantastic distraction. I suppose, unlike Joe, I've always found terrain making quite daunting. I've always found that of all of the aspects of the hobby, it's probably, for me, it's the most challenging. And so it was really nice to devote some time to building terrain, and over the process of October, actually starting to like what I was producing, which was great. I suppose with the benefit of hindsight, building a Wild West town probably wasn't the best of choices, because now I've sunk hours and hours and hours into building a town of very period specific stuff that I'm never going to use for anything else apart from cowboy games. But even still, it was really good. And I think, you know, one of the things I've been talking about with other people is that if you don't have the terrain in the appropriate scale for a project, you know, you don't even have generic things like trees. It's a significant barrier to getting into a new scale or getting into a new period. Yeah. So I feel that I've made a significant amount of inroads into kind of expanding my horizons a bit now. Okay. And again, you know, hats off to Alex over at Storm of Steel for actually getting Terrain-Toba together, because I mean, he's had a fantastic response. It's been brilliant. Right.
Yeah, it was. In fairness, it really did garner such a head of steam behind it, like in terms of the amount of people that rode in there and were putting out amazing stuff. I mean, of all different scales, and indeed terrain piece size, like be they, you know, elements of scatter terrain or whatever. Indeed, some very sizable and serious pieces that tend to go on the table, which was super to see. Like, and then, yeah, the video, I mean, here, like, there is serious man hours gone into the creation of all of that stuff, like, which is brilliant. And the Western stuff, Andrew, like, is that for What a Cowboy, or is that any particular set, or just a generic set of Western type terrain?
Well, I have played What a Cowboy now, and I will talk about that shortly, I think. But no, it's for a game called Dracula's America.
Oh.
Which is kind of, it's one of those Osprey games that kind of came out at the same time as Frostgrave and Gaslands, but never really went on to have the same level of success, which is a real shame in my opinion, because a lot of the mechanisms in the game are absolutely fantastic. I think the only reason why it didn't really succeed is because I think probably the period is a bit niche, and you know, the kind of the mythosy Weird West wouldn't necessarily have as broad appeal.
Although, you know, with the new Silver Bayonet that is out now, which is like Napoleonic meets Gothic horror, zombie kind of stuff, right? So that sort of crossover might actually mean people start thinking, oh yeah, you know, having monsters and supernatural things like vampires into a Wild West setting is quite fun. You know, if you start accepting that you can have this sort of historical with a little touch of fantasy crossover, you know, you might see a revival in that.
No, it is. I mean, it's a very interesting system, and you can play it without those kind of fantastic elements and just play it as a straightforward cowboy game, which is fine. But there are some things within the game, like the activation process and the way that everything is opposed dice rolls, so it's very interactive. There's lots of interchange between the players. It's a really, really dynamic game, and I think it's a real shame that it didn't go on and become successful in the same way that Gaslands and Frostgrave did, because in my opinion, you know, I think that a lot of stuff in the game is superior to Frostgrave. It just didn't have that broad commercial appeal, I suppose. Which is a real shame, because it's a cracking game. But what about you, Tom? What have you been up to?
Yeah, the last couple of months. Bits and bobs, I think, actually, to be honest with you. I've been uncharacteristically, I think, unfocused in a broad sense when it comes to hobby over the last number of months. I suppose coming out of the summer, at least since we spoke, like the main focus was I had ran a good few. I mean, myself and Joe, we were going through a very heavy phase of Chain of Command at that point. Joe, kind of, we were doing a lot of it, and that kind of culminated with the last of the virtual large series, really, where we hosted that game and stuff. And then what carried me through then was I was hosting a number of Space Hulk campaigns, like a linked series of games, and they were kind of stretched out over every fortnight or every 3 weeks. And so there was kind of like, you would kind of plateau, you kind of peak with one of those, and then you'd kind of tail off, and you'd be kind of maybe tweaking a couple of bits for the next one, and then, you know, 3 weeks would pass, and then the next one would pass. And so that entity, that Space Hulk entity, that's that Space Hulk campaign with Jeremy and Fraser, really, which was the first of the major ones that I ran, like that kind of really sustained me for a good couple of weeks, even with the gaps in between it, and it was kind of the focus. And that was, I mean, that was so much fun. That was great crack. Like, as much as I give out about it, it was brilliant crack. And then after that, then I kind of tailed off. I played and finished up a couple of Titans for Adaptus Titanicus that were kind of sitting on the desk, because they were easy to kind of, I wasn't delving into too much, kind of sit down, finish one, and there's enough work in them anyway, individually. So I kind of cleared 2 or 3 of those off the desk. That's not to suggest there isn't another 5 yet to be finished, but I did clear 2 or 3 of them off the desk. And then I was ramping up for a new Space Hulk campaign, the Deathwing Dark Angel supplement, which kind of we had aimed, and I had set myself the deadline of being ready to commit to and launch in September, which we did. And we got one done at the tail end of September, and then real life kind of got in the way. So we're hoping to get the next one done, next mission done next week. And then in between of all that, I've been hosting, I suppose, a lot of virtual Space Hulk introductory games for yourselves, and indeed for a number of other people as well. And indeed anyone really that kind of says, here, listen, puts the hand up and says, I'd love to give it a go. If they're happy to crawl around a Space Hulk for a couple of hours in an evening, I've been certainly happy to host that. And outside of that, I did get a couple of in-person games in as well with various elements that I've done, but I didn't commit to at least working my way through any major projects in terms of painting, finishing, that type of element. I did, however, do an awful lot of acquisition over the last number of months, both in terms of rule sets. I have an old Warhammer Fantasy Battles fetish that needs to be, itch that needs to be scratched every now and then. And so I've been kind of getting army books together, and I went rooting around in the attic, and I found a bunch of Bretonians and stuff that are, pitch perfect, they're untouched. And then I've been, willing myself to sit down once I have acquired the remaining 2 or 3 elements to round it out, to do that as a singular entity. And I'm really looking forward to do that. I also, I kind of want to say that my arm got twisted, but it really didn't. Like, it didn't take much to twist it. But one of my good friends, probably listening or whatever, or watching, he's mad keen to do the Cold War stuff, the World War III Team Yankee, 7 Days to the River Rhine. We've discussed it before, and he was mad keen to do that, and so I peered over into the abyss, and then I jumped feet first into it. Like, so there were some serious acquisitions of all but an armored battle group from a British perspective with chieftains in the first instance, and then challengers thereafter. And then I managed to pick up some Soviets to provide an op for. And then after that, there was some West Germans have somehow slipped across the Irish Sea and made it into my there's at least half a company of Panzer or Leopard 2 sitting in a pile waiting to be done. So to answer your question, I guess maybe not as much as I would like to have, and certainly I haven't had that all-consuming focus that I definitely had before deployment last year, when it was like total World War II Normandy focus at 28 mil, and that was it. And since I've come back, really, I found it, even January, took a couple of weeks, if not months, to bed back in at home. And then there was a lot going on, and definitely, I had 6 months worth of kind of pent up hobby interests, and I'd seen stuff that I hadn't touched before, I hadn't done before. That game was really interesting. So I've kind of really been kind of bouncing around between various things, with the core central stream being, hosting that Space Hulk, or running those Space Hulk games. And that's been absolutely brilliant. And I suppose that dovetails nicely maybe into our main section, in that, like, I suppose we've both kind of touched upon it in terms of virtual gaming, which when we spoke last, we were all doing. I mean, that was more or less it, given the circumstances that I think we found ourselves in globally, and indeed certainly in the UK and in Ireland, in terms of lockdowns and whatnot that was imposed upon us. So we were kind of getting into that wargaming space virtually, and indeed, that brought some fantastic things with playing different games. I think we can probably talk about that a little bit, and then certainly meeting so many different people, which, from my own perspective, I have to say I was lucky enough then to go and meet in person, in the middle of October, mid to late October, when I actually travelled to the UK, which was quite an adventure from outside of the UK these days, but from Ireland across into the depths of North Yorkshire, to go to Airborne Lord, hosted by John Savage, which was an absolutely phenomenal experience, and a great one to break out of, I suppose, in a real sense, the virtual world and back into the physical world. And I know, Andrew, you've recently got to a Lardy event too. So I suppose that's my question. How did you find that as an experience? Both the day itself, I suppose, the Lardy experience, but also I think really, is that your first major gaming experience since the imposition of lockdown, and how did you find that? Have you gone to any shows in particular, since things have reopened up?
Well, I think throughout lockdown, virtual gaming was a feature of my hobby, but it wasn't the overwhelming activity. I had a few games. I got to meet some really nice people as a consequence, but it kind of was very much kind of supplemental to all of the other online stuff that was going on as well at the same time.
Okay.
So, the communication through Twitter. I decided to start the channel during lockdown because I just had the time to do so. So I thought it would be a good idea. And also as well, the Lardy Discord channel as well, which I also participated in. So what I found was that whole period of lockdown, and not necessarily virtual gaming, but certainly virtual gaming as a component of, the hobby moving online and becoming more digital, and people embracing new ways of communicating, really opened up the hobby.
Brilliant.
I think immensely for me. Where I am, I'm not part of a club. I game with my friend, and it can feel very insular and very isolated at times, particularly when you're doing things like painting. You're typically quite solitary and you're away from people. And there is an appeal to that, but also as well, it is, as I say, quite isolating. So I found that the whole virtual experience of gaming was a way to make really, really good, really connect with people in a more meaningful sense than just chatting to them on Twitter.
Okay.
And a lot of the time, it just confirmed that the people that I was speaking to on Twitter were actually really good people. And, that was fantastic to be able to do that. And I think coming out of lockdown and thinking about Steel Lard, I think I was very motivated to go out and meet people after lockdown.
Okay.
I don't know if I hadn't had that process of being confined and then fortuitously meeting that many more people, if I naturally would have just thrown my hat in and gone to a Lardy day. I think it was a combination of factors that infused me to get out and engage with more people. And Steel Lard was fantastic, in terms of, I suppose in many respects, people that attend the Lardy days, I mean, I think it's a bit like they're probably the SAS of the wargaming community, I kind of imagine that there are an awful lot of people who hover around wargaming who are on probably the spectrum to some degree or another. And, it takes a special sort of wargamer to venture out of your bedsit. Actually go out and meet people face to face and even socialize, and heaven forbid, go and have a pint of beer afterwards and not actually talk about wargaming all the time. So that environment was fantastic, and everybody was really, really welcoming, and having the opportunity to put faces to names. It was a fantastic day. It was the culmination of my hobby to this point.
Okay.
But having said that, a lot of it was very similar to virtual Lard in many respects. The same sort of sentiments were there. The banter in the pub after virtual Lard is really, really great fun. The games and the people you get to meet virtually are great. but doing it in person just kind of elevated it to a whole new level, really.
Okay. And do you think that having been exposed to those virtual art events, enhanced the experience then, that when you went, or at least, maybe added to it or whatever, in terms of when you went to one virtual or one in person then?
It certainly helped lay those foundations so that when you were meeting people, you weren't just walking in cold, and you had a sense that, maybe people had seen the rubbish that you write on Twitter or the stuff that you put out on your channel in advance. And so they were very receptive and welcoming. The thing that was great about virtual art that obviously Still Art lacked was that virtual art was very international as well. And I think that is one of the great, one of the unique features about the virtual online gaming that is very, very difficult to replicate in a face-to-face setting. And the fact that, as you come in and out of virtual art throughout the course of the day or the weekend, as the time zones shift, you meet completely different people throughout the course of the 48 hours that it's on, which is just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it is. I definitely think it's one of the things that it definitely does facilitate, like, is that broadening of horizons of participants, like, definitely, like, And how about you, Joe? In the last number of months, how have you gone with virtual gaming since we've spoken last?
Well, I mean, gaming for me has sort of been a little bit hard to fit in last few months anyway. September was a busy work month, and so was October, and so to have these sort of like self-imposed and also not self-imposed deadlines for like articles and things in the evenings, I was putting the time into working on the terrain and stuff, and writing the articles up and getting those finished and things. Also, I played your Space Hulk game. I played three games in that little mini campaign with Alex, and despite grievous losses, but moral victories, really.
Now we're getting into
it's a game of moral victories.
Yeah, that's it, right? Moral victories. I'll take that. They were really good fun, right?
I think if I remember correctly, you were the only person to survive in numerous missions. As in your model representing you left everyone else for dead in the Space Hulk, but you managed to survive.
Come on, it's the dark.
I'm casting no aspersions whatsoever, Joseph, but
it happened. They weren't good enough. The Emperor's not pleased with them. But it was a great game. I really enjoyed playing Space Hulk and stuff. My last war game I played was with Jeff and Mark. And it was Jeff was testing out his lovely Ardennes table. Again, he was taking to. Where are you taking it to?
Clotted Love.
Yeah, Clotted Love, wasn't it? Yeah, right. So he was doing a test run of that online, and I played with that, and that was fantastic. It was really good. That was a nail biter, right? In the end, it was down to one morale each. Me and Mark, the Germans, but we were like opposing officers. We weren't friends, and we both wanted to sort of be the ones to sort of get the victory. And in the end, Jeff was on one morale point, and so are we. And my troops were like an inch from the table edge. Like I just had to get to there. And like he got enough kills on that. Anyway, it was great. Yeah, it's a really good, really fun game. I was actually scheduled to go to Steel Lard, and I was down for it. But then a clash in the timetabling happened, and my daughter was doing a theatre show, and so I had to cancel Steel Lard and stuff. So that would have been my first Lard Day thing ever, and it would have been also like my first big in-person game. In fact, it would have been my first in-person game with someone who isn't family. All right, so So my normal play area is like my brother-in-law and my brother and my nephew and stuff. They all live nearby, sort of thing. So that's my standard in-person gaming thing. And interestingly, because I sort of got into wargaming not that long before lockdown stuff happened anyway. And so I played like 6 months maybe of like in-person games and things. So then actually the shift to virtual games was really good, because suddenly I was getting more games in. I was playing with people all over the place, all over the world and things. All over the world, I say that it's like America, Britain, and Ireland. I mean, it's not, it's not
broad enough, sir.
It's broad enough, right? But it's no one from like Indonesia yet or anything. But
yes.
So that was so I've actually really enjoyed virtual gaming and stuff, and it's meant that I get more games in where I wouldn't normally get games in. And at the height of lockdown, when like family couldn't come over as well, and therefore it would have otherwise meant my gaming dried up quite pretty soon after getting into gaming, which could have been the death knell for my war gaming. The virtual stuff meant that I was able to play games with people, and and it was really good. I am down to, well, if you do your emerald lard, lard, potato lard,
as yet unnamed.
Yeah, so all right, lard of the potatoes or something, right?
Steady on now.
how many other insults can I get in, right?
Lardicorn.
Larbricorn.
Stop now. This conversation has been going on for several weeks, and we are as yet. Well, in fairness, we have hit pretty much every Irish stereotype that we can get, and I am not biting in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but we'll see. So if that goes ahead, that will be. I'm coming to that, and that will be my first, lardy thing I'm going to run a table. I'm also down to do Ali's Blue's oozing lard. I think so. That will be so. I'm looking forward to
those.
Where's that? Where's that? Where's that?
In Bedford.
Right.
Bedford, yeah. And that's in like July.
Not far from me. That's July, July 24th. Yeah. Bedford's only like 40 minutes away from me. Brilliant. So that would be close enough to. And Ireland, which is 8 hours.
It's only the other side of the channel. It's only the other side of the Irish Sea.
The ferry takes
it'll be worth
days.
it, regardless what the name is. It'll be worth it, right? Okay. Promise.
I'll sink.
I'll even facilitate the visa for you or whatever you need to get.
I'll have to smuggle in or something,
exactly, like
the back of a lorry.
Yeah, but tell me this now. In terms of so fair enough. We maybe you haven't done so much in-person gaming, but are you still doing? And I know you said you were busy and all the rest of it, but like, are you virtual gaming still once a week, or would you be once every 2 weeks? Or how often would you manage to get a game in?
Maybe like once a month.
Okay.
But the thing is, what sort of clashes with when I've got like a busy schedule and it's hard to get games in. I do have a regular weekly D&D game.
Brilliant.
And so that takes up one evening, like guaranteed in the week, sort of thing. So then, if I've got time also to do a game and stuff, then I can. But it can be. It's been for me, like from a work point of view, like the run up to Christmas is like the busiest time of year for us. So this is not particularly a representative time of year for sort of thing. So in the summer and in the spring and stuff, things are lighter. I should be able to get a game like once a fortnight sort of thing going.
Okay, great.
The goal, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all fair points. I mean, I definitely think in terms of the virtual gaming, I think when there was a survey done, in relation to it, or at least one of the questions, or was a major topic of conversation, and I think pretty much everyone said, yeah, look, the benefits of it are myriad. I think we've covered on some of them there, Andrew, in terms of providing that outlet. In terms of reaching out to people who you've interacted with maybe on Twitter or whatever, or some other virtual medium, and maybe just extending that type of relationship, and then being able to game with them as much as the back and forth banter and stuff like that. Certainly it broadens horizons in terms of the ability to meet and play with people outside of a gaming circle that you may not have. And certainly if someone doesn't have a gaming circle, I think the opportunity, particularly where when you are effectively bantering back and forth with people in terms of having the opportunity to actually game with someone, and it's not difficult. I mean, it really isn't to do it, to host it, or indeed certainly even then to play a game on it, or to be hosted on a game isn't necessarily that much work. And so it definitely provides that outlet for people. who, and I noticed you said, Andrew, that just, and I would have said most people living in the UK, certainly in comparison to those people living here in Ireland, we don't have that network of gaming clubs that seems to be far more prevalent in the UK. And I noted that you said there, well, you don't actually have one. You game with one of your best friends or there, and that's who your primary gaming partner is. And I would be much the same. I would have a relatively close knit gaming circle here. One or two. That's expanded out to maybe half a dozen. But again, that's limited by a number of different constraints. And certainly from my own perspective, before I deployed last year, we were very lucky. The 4 or 5 of us were relatively coherent in terms of our postings and our availability to be able to game. But since I've gone and come back, someone else has gone and is missing for 6 months or 12 months. Someone else is getting ready to go, and getting that coherency within what is a very small gaming group can be a challenge. And so whereas you would think, oh yeah, we'll get 2 games in a month, and that might be the aspiration in person, we found that more consistently we're perhaps getting maybe one, for sure, and then maybe question mark another one. But that virtual medium definitely allows for more games to be done relatively easily, because the location doesn't necessarily matter. Indeed, I did host one game back during the summer virtually. I was running the game here in the kitchen, and we had one person in Syria, we had one person in Africa, and then we had 2 people elsewhere in Ireland, and I was hosting it for 4 other people, none of whom were here, and it worked great. You know what I mean, in terms of the ability to do that. I would say at the moment, whereas in the earlier part of the year I was probably hosting 1, definitely, if not 2 games a week virtually, I'm probably hosting 1 a week, maybe every 10 days or so, probably at the moment, which is grand. And I found certainly the types of games that you can host makes a big difference as well. Like, particularly on as I call it, a school night, Wednesday or Monday to Friday, it's very easy for me to host something like Space Hulk, which is 15 minutes to set it up, 15 minutes to take it down. For people that are equally working, during the working hours, whatever it is, it's not a major commitment of time in the evening. And so hosting for 2 hours or 2.5 hours or whatever it is super straightforward and very, very, very easy for the host to do, in comparison to something like you and I, Joe, where we were trying to host Chain of Command and Bolt Action at 7 o'clock in the evening and finishing at midnight or after midnight, and then you're looking at an hour to strip the table down and
I just do it in the morning. I leave it.
Man, it was now that I think back, I'm like, what were we doing? Like, it's far more civilized when we host it on a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever it is, like, and giving us that scope to do it, like, but yeah, I think certainly it's a topic. It's one that I think we will continue to see be a part of the landscape of gaming now, in terms of we've all been so exposed to it, but maybe our engagement with it might change insofar as also,
people that if you've played against someone virtually during this time period and stuff, right, and you're not gonna like go, I'm not gonna play with you anymore, you can bugger off, that's it, I'm done, so I wouldn't have played with you, Tom. We've played loads of games together, right? And if it wasn't virtual, I would never have like randomly been passing in Ireland and gone, I'll go in that guy's house. Oh, you've got war game, So
this is a coincidence.
That'd be weird,
Let's play a game.
That'd be weird. Hey, I happen to have a whole box of Panzer Grenadiers. How odd. I've tried 47 houses so far. They've all told me to go away.
Yes, but you persevered. And indeed, when traveling to Ireland, forget about your raincoat. Bring a box of 28mm Panzer Grenadiers. You find someone to play with.
Stand at the airport with a sign going, Mom.
They go, oh, you want Mad Tom? He lives down the road.
Sure. I know him well. He lives in the house there on the bottom.
Everyone knows everyone, don't they?
This is it's like 1 degree of separation.
Oh,
like
it's he's my cousin's brother's sister's nephew. He lives over there. All right, okay, cool. But yeah, so like, people I think aren't gonna, even if you are doing more in-person gaming again, if you've got opponents that you play with virtually and you think actually there's good fun to play, it's because otherwise if what I is there's no like effort with like transporting things anywhere, right? So you bring it downstairs or whatever, and then you can just play with anyone like easily and stuff, and it's quite even if like the setup takes a bit of time, that's the same either way whether you set it up in person or virtually.
Correct. Yeah.
But there's no travel time, and you can play with people that aren't anywhere near you, and so I think people are gonna, even when people are gaming in person and there's no COVID issues and there's no worries about that sort of stuff and travel's all free and stuff, people are still going to do it to some degree, because actually people have found it's a look, so I as a parallel, right, in this sort of like D&D world and things, right, that D&D was always a mainly face-to-face game, and the virtual tabletops, VTTs and things like Roll20 and whatever were around, and they were popular, but they weren't getting the bulk of like people's experiences. But then during lockdown, the entire D&D population of players went online, right? Like you couldn't do in-person games because unless your whole party lived in your house, you had no thing. So everyone went onto VTT, and now people are playing in person more. People are not stopping on the VTTs because actually people have found that they can play with people all around the world. There's features that the VTTs have that you don't have in person, and stuff. And people actually like, this is a good way of playing. Or, and some people are sort of doing a hybrid. So if they are playing in person for some reason, they're sometimes like having like a flat screen TV on their table, lying down on the table flat, right, broadcasting a VTT software, and they either place their minis on the TV screen or so they're sort of like finding that actually they don't want to let go of that technology, and they've got parties, game parties and stuff from all over the place. So I don't, in the same way, that's not going to go anywhere. People are going to still be playing VTT even with a full return to face. I can't see people abandoning, I can't see anyone thinking, thank goodness virtual's over
and done with it. Yeah. And
I'm going to show my age here. Why are people role playing with miniatures? What happened to the theatre of the mind?
Oh, shut up. Look, all right. My whole business is making maps for this. So theatre of the mind. What you want is high quality maps made by Heroic Maps.
Correct.
All right.
Product placement.
Right, which is better than your mind, Andrew.
Well, most things
has
are.
Nothing on it.
Most things are.
They do say, Andrew, that a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Exactly.
Well, absolutely. But I mean, one of the things I was going to just comment on, Tom, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed my game of Space Hulk with you, and Joe, you also mentioned the fact that you played with Jeff with the J as well, and it was interesting to me how much people were prepared to invest in putting on a good game. And and it very, very quickly went from, has anybody thought about doing a virtual game, to all of a sudden people having multiple cameras, being able to switch between perspectives, and probably people who would be very good at umpiring a game anyway in real life, but they very quickly made the adjustment to doing it virtually. And that was another one of the observations really about how I think virtual gaming really emphasized the role of the umpire. Because one of the things that I found quite difficult with virtual gaming was complex terrain. So normally, obviously, when you're there in person, you are free to explore it how you will. You have no issues around perspective or anything like that. But if you have a good umpire who is possibly familiar with the types of problems that you might be having, or is possibly, really positive in how they engage with new players and encouraging them and he's very good at helping people learn and creates that friendly environment online where you can come together and learn as you play, I think is a really, really important thing. And that was the overwhelming sense that I got from my game with Welsh Jeff with the J. I mean, in terms of, for want of a better word, a mentor type figure to take you through the process of the game itself. He was absolutely brilliant. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, while we're mentioning Jeff, actually, because I'll say, because when I did my Rua Pocket PSC thing and stuff, I wanted to have the 5 tables play tested, right? And I couldn't like play test all 5 myself, so I asked the volunteers, and Jeff was one of the volunteers. So I gave him this table. I think Jeff must have played it about like 10 times or something. All right, so I said just once is enough, but he was like testing it, and he was going, the Americans found this difficult here, and this is where they went wrong, and so I was going, well, what if we tried this? And then he tried it with like more support points or a different, and he tried it again and again. He was giving me these detailed reports about it, and so he really, I put a big thanks to him in the article, because he like brought his whole wealth of experience and stuff, right? And he must have put, I don't know, like 15 hours into testing this one scenario for me, right, to try and make sure it was balanced right, and that it played well and people would enjoy it and want to do it and stuff. And I think that sort of like goes in with what you're saying, Andrew, as well, about people being willing to put on games and things, right? Like again and again and again, I've sort of seen it and said that like the wargaming community is super welcoming and super helpful, and people just want to help each other out.
So here's a question for you both, right? And this is why I think one of the biggest strengths of what has occurred over the last 12 months, certainly, but over the last 18 months since we've found ourselves in this mess. How many games systems, right? New game systems have you been exposed to and played by dint of being invited through a virtual medium to experience that you arguably wouldn't have had the chance to do so if you hadn't had that virtual medium to do so? So like, how many different types of gaming like systems or genres, or rule sets, have you had the opportunity, just simply with no investment, in terms of like, this really interests me, I'd love to give it a go, and see, do I enjoy it? Would I do more of it? How does it play? How many of those systems do you think, roughly off the top of your head, you've been exposed to over the last 18 months or so?
Mine's quite a low number. Mine is 2.
No.
I think mainly because of my like World War II focus, right? But the big change was Chain of Command, right?
Okay.
So my opening game into wargaming was Bot Action. And I sort of heard of Chain of Command on the peripheral sort of thing quite early on, and things. I was like, well, I'll just stick with this first rule set I'm learning, and all the rest of stuff. But it was then playing, a big shift for me was playing in Virtual Lard. I was going to be I was down for Chain of Command game, and it was Chain of Command Star Wars, but it was still Chain of Command. And I thought, well, beforehand, I better get the rules and just get to sort of learn it a bit and stuff. So, and then since then, all my World War II gaming has been Chain of Command, and I've written like a pint-sized campaign for it and stuff. So I've quite firmly set my flag. The other thing in Space Hulk is your Space Hulk games, because I had played Space Hulk when I was 10, like 30 years ago. And I only played like half a game because Mum came to collect me from my friend's house, and so it was a very short-lived experience. And so then, I haven't got Space Hulk, and no one I know has Space Hulk. And if it wasn't for a virtual setup, then I wouldn't have played Space Hulk. But it's really fun, and even though even though all my party die,
through no fault of anyone else's but yourselves, really. To be honest.
Well, I did survive, and
three blips maybe every time.
Blips, what surprise?
If you abandon tactical caution, you throw yourself into the wind.
Sorry, that was my ally,
end badly.
who had his whole party, his whole squad killed in the first room.
I think I'm going to have to stop this here. I think it's very difficult, very harsh to slander Alex like this when he's not here to defend himself and the complete.
He couldn't defend himself in the Space Hulk either, could he?
Look, we'll call a spade a spade. You were outfought by the Gene Stealer player consistently. And we'll leave it there. In any case, moving swiftly along before we refight that Hulk fight for that 55th time. And we probably should go back and refight it with all Thunder Hammers and Lightning Halls. That's a different question from another evening. However, Andrew, how many game types have you been exposed to over the last 18 months or so?
Well, before I answer the question, I would just like to say, knowing Alex, he's probably got a video of that Space Hulk game on his channel.
He has.
Absolutely. So if anybody's looking for definitive evidence
of what actually happened,
you can go and see
it. Channel.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go and watch it.
Maybe we can go away and review it and come back next time.
No, we'll never speak.
And then you can apologise, Tom. You can say, like, I'm sorry I consistently cheated.
Now, steady on now. It's not my fault that the blips randomly came up at 3-3-3-3-3.
Yeah.
3-3-3-3 again,
Yeah.
you know. That's just the luck of the draw, Joe.
But you see, I think that's another one of the benefits of virtual gaming, you see.
Well, you can cheat.
When players are trusted to roll their own dice, you soon start to work out who's the honest person and whose moral compass is pointed in the right direction.
Consistently rolling.
That's all I'm going to say.
6s and 5s, their dice rolled, nothing else, I would suggest. But in any case, before we all end up not speaking to each other anymore.
This is the final episode of
the final episode, and we're only on episode 2, yeah. But in any case, outside of that, Andrew, broadly speaking, how many differing game systems have you? You know,
well, the game I played the most throughout lockdown virtually was Chain of Command.
Oh, okay.
But I'd already played Chain of Command quite extensively anyway. But I had my first game of Sharp Practice virtually.
Yeah.
Hosted by the wonderful Matt Slade, playing against Paul Edwards.
Yeah.
And again, who I had the chance to meet face to face at Steelard, which was fantastic. Dux Britanniarum. I first played at Virtual Lard and thoroughly enjoyed, and has subsequently gone on to churn out warbands and this kind of thing. And if you're a Lardy fan and you haven't tried Dux Brit, I mean, what's wrong with you? You do really need to give it a go. It's a fantastic game. And the third one was your game of Space Hulk, Tom. For me, Space Hulk was one of those games that, as I was moving away from the hobby at the time that Space Hulk was becoming a thing. And so I never really experienced it when I was in those kind of formative teenage years.
Yeah.
So to actually play it, it was fantastic. I've got to say, it was probably one of the most intense gaming experiences I've ever had.
That's what I like to hear.
That's what I like to
hear. It is one of the. It's in many respects, it's an incredibly simple set of rules, but at the same time, it's absolutely fantastic.
It's knife edge stuff, really, isn't it? Like, I think I mean, from my own perspective, since I came back off of deployment end of January, I got back on like a Saturday or something. I got back on a Monday, the 27th, and that Saturday, literally the end of that week, I had my first virtual Lard event, and indeed that was actually my first virtual wargaming session, first virtual war game with Lard, you know, as an entity itself. Since then, I have played Sharp Practice and learned Sharp Practice with Mark and Gavin, which was absolutely phenomenal, and that was brilliant at the start of the year. Like, you know, that was like literally the launch pad into Napoleonics. So I have learned to play Sharp Practice, absolutely love it. First rule set exposed to. I was exposed to Chain of Command and have played a long number of games of Chain of Command, and would classify that I pretty much learned how to play Chain of Command virtually with Joe. We learned together more or less over the course of the summer, back and forth with our tutorial evenings and in a couple of games that we played. So I played Sharp Practice, Chain of Command. I played Kiss Me Hardy, the Napoleonic Age of Sail gaming, thanks to Andy, who just hosted a game one Saturday. And I've played that 2 or 3 times since, and I absolutely love it. Would never in a million years have considered touching Napoleonic Age of Sail gaming, period. Like, not at all. So Sharp Practice, Chain of Command, and Kiss Me Hardy. I played Infamy, Ancients type, and Lord of the Rings type, courtesy of John Savage. Again, 2 games that I would have looked at from the outset and said, yeah, okay, that looks really cool, but never probably, push comes to shove, have committed to it. And I'm just blown away. I mean, John's games are amazing anyway, and he's an amazing host. Yeah. But like the opportunity to engage with those rule sets, that's 4 rule sets straight away. Outside of that, I have done 3 different types of Kriegspiel.
I forgot to mention Kriegspiel.
Like totally, like 3, like never in a million years. Like, okay, I do it for work, but let's just park that whole conversation for a moment, right? But in the manner in which it was done, I've done Napoleonic Kriegspiel, I've done World War II Kriegspiel at varying different levels. I've done tabletop RPG games via a virtual medium, and indeed Joe's most recent D&D type one as well. I think that about wraps it up. So that's like Star Practice, Chain of Command, Kiss Me Hardy, Infamy, Kriegspiel. That's 5 different game systems that and experiences that I've had via the virtual medium, all of whom have been hosted by people who have just said, yeah, listen, I'm willing to host this, everything. You just literally need to sit down with your laptop and off you go. And some of those have just been, we're just going to have a game as an entity. And then others have led to, countless hours, with other people, myself and Joe, with Chain of Command back and forth, playing on evenings and then tutorial evenings and then playing games, or with Mark and the Sharp Practice and stuff like that. And then myself, I've obviously hosted a load of Space Hulk, and I've really pushed that. And then again, like, for people who've never played it or who've touched it and they've left it or whatever it is, and absolutely love hosting it. Like, it's such a great game to host. Someone has 2.5 hours to kill on an evening when they have a beer. They probably need a beer at the end of it, whether they have one during it. But all of that, and even in the next 2 weeks, I think I have 3 games more or less lined up with people who haven't, who haven't played it and would like to give it a go. This Friday, tomorrow evening, I'm hosting an introductory game of Adaptus Titanicus for John Savage. Now, that is, it took me a while to get my head around conceptually how I was going to manage this, and it only works because John has a starter set, so he has the command terminals and that tactile bit that he needs to manage, which is a key element of the game. But since he has those, I can simply put the models on the table with the terrain, and then I can walk him through the whole game engine with him moving the various command terminals on his end, and all he needs is the computer screen. And so facilitating that type of game is absolutely it's brilliant. I find it I get an awful kick out of introducing people to those games and being able to give someone that new gaming experience, like in terms of people that haven't or wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to it, and hopefully getting them into it, and that I think if I have any key takeaway in terms of the positive takeaways from virtual gaming, is the opportunity to introduce someone, or indeed be introduced to a different gaming system that you may otherwise never have the opportunity or the resources or the time to invest in. And I think I'll come back to Joe's point earlier, certainly about our little corner of Twitter, which is my wargaming as a social media outlet where I interact with people. I've not come across, certainly in our circle, and I mean that when a circle, like it's massive circle, the amount of people that we interact with, found people who are anything other than willing to help or to extend that offer or facilitate that type of gaming. And I think for people coming into it, or maybe, you know, don't have the opportunity to do it, I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I really hope that's something that continues. Like, you know, I certainly will still continue my glorious Space Hulk crusade to the four corners of the internet for the foreseeable future. Like, you know, certainly I hope Joe will come back. You know, he doesn't feel too badly done off. He'll come back for another go around on the next campaign. Like, you know, and Andrew, we need to bring you back into the Hulk at some stage as well. I think you only played the first mission. It ended badly, if I remember correctly.
I was so scarred.
You
haven't recovered yet.
Need to come back in the fold, you know.
I mean, I keep myself for forgetting Kriegspiel, but I would say that virtually playing Kriegspiel is probably the optimal way to do it.
Yeah.
Of all the types of games we've talked about, I can imagine the type of Kriegspiel, and I've only played once in Andy's Martlet game, but I think that playing remotely actually enhanced that experience. I think all of the other games we talked about, to a degree, there are obviously some unique benefits, but there are also compromises that you have to make to deliver that. With the Kriegspiel, though, I thought it was absolutely the perfect medium to conduct that type of game. To the extent that actually the thought of going somewhere and doing it face to face would probably be quite off-putting, because you're going to have a lot of sitting around waiting. And through the clever management of like the communications through the channel and this kind of thing, I think Andy structured it absolutely brilliantly.
Yeah, I definitely think I think it brings. That's an interesting one. I should probably have Andy here for this one, like, and I think he really has been such a standard bearer for it, like in terms of, you know, really kind of facilitating people and giving them the opportunity to give it a go. Like, you know, I think that if you did it virtual or did it in person, much like our own exercises that we run, it actually just brings a different set of challenges to it. In terms of, you know, in some ways it's just a different set of challenges. When you are at a remote distance from people, the communications is an issue insofar as you have that barrier, you know, however intangible it is, like it's still there. Yeah. Okay. In terms of how you are managing that flow of information back and forth. But when you actually have multiple people in the room, it can actually be as difficult, if not more difficult, in terms of still wrestling with that information. Even 2 weeks ago, we you know, last week I ran basically a Kriegspiel, a one-day Kriegspiel at battalion level for battalion battle staffs. And you know, there was only 10 of them on the battle staff. So we had a battalion commander, a chief of staff, S1, S2, S3, S4, battery commander, and then, you know, 1 or 2 assistant staff officers to assist the primaries like the S2 and the S3. And one of the major takeaways from them in doing it, and they were working in a syndicate room and they had all their was in ensuring the coherency of information between them. And they were only working at different ends of the table. And working under a time pressure, and where that time pressure was putting difficulty on them in terms of synchronizing their deductions and the passage of information between them, and then delivering a coherent answer at the very end to the problem that we had given them. Yeah, okay. And I think we wrestled with that in the Kriegspiel world as well. In the virtual Kriegspiel world as well. But largely by dint of the communication method, you know, that was pushing it apart and limiting the amount of information that we could easily and coherently pass back and forth each other in a timely fashion. Whereas in the other world, we can pass as much information that we want to each other. It's about passing the correct information in a time currently. So I think definitely, but you're right. From a virtual medium perspective, Kriegspiel, I think it really, really lends itself to it. I think whatever level you're working at, I think it works at it, like, you know, and that's a good point. But that is another. I mean, here I would never have done that. Equally, Joe's what did you call it, Joe? The virtual tabletop simulator.
Yeah, D&D.
Yeah, the system that you were using. my preconceptions around what D&D is in terms of the verbal description of and that world, that creating that world thing, I would find that, here you'll get into it and all the rest of it, but I found the means through which you were able to run that in terms of the graphical depiction of our locations on your glorious maps now, all credit to you, and the terrible horrors that you had waiting for us, like those invisible skeletons that I ran into every time I ran into a corridor. Okay, it'll be okay, they'll know afterwards. Andrew won't publish the video until after
too late now, they've already run into the invisible skeletons.
No.
It wasn't invisible, you were just not looking and you charged into it. It's different.
Yeah, but you told me I was a paladin and my job was to charge everything. That's what I did.
Everywhere,
yeah, but if I hadn't done that, we'd still be in the first map segment, not the last map segment. I was pushing the party along. That's what I was. I was playing to stereotype. I fear no darkness. Smash face, everything. That's exactly what I was doing. But in any case, having gone slightly off tangent, my point is I found that medium fantastic for getting into that, and that's not something I would necessarily readily be able to do or get into. So I think those are two really good important points, from the virtual medium perspective, virtual game perspective. And then going back to I suppose, as we've kind of chatted all about that virtual stuff, but going to play, I think, Andrew, we should probably, before we wrap up, talk about our experiences and then whet Joe's appetite totally for brackets as yet unnamed Irish Lard et al. To be conducted across 2022. God help us all, we're nearly into it. How did you find the Lardy Day as a whole then, when you went to Sheffield in the north of the UK? Is that correct?
It was fantastic. It was. I think the things I'll take away from the day were the sense of community and just how welcoming everybody was. That was an enormous part of the day. And really, that to me was the absolute high point of the day. Really, everything else was secondary. Okay. The quality of the games were absolutely outstanding. But had they not been hosted by considerate, friendly people, and had my opponents not also been considerate, friendly people, the rest of the experience would have been quite poor. But it just wasn't the case. It was fantastic. And I mean, so...
just which games did you get to play, Andrew?
Well, I was very fortunate. I got to play What a Cowboy with John Savage. Which was great fun. And testimony to just how flexible the What a Tanker system is, really. It just, because next door he'd also then built his kind of Narcos,
the Colombian cartel
table as well. Just throwing that together because he had to spare 5 minutes one Wednesday evening. But it was just, but the tables were fantastic. They're absolutely beautiful. Miniatures were beautiful. I then played Sydney Roundwoods with Flashing Blades.
Oh yes, that looks fantastic.
Which again was very, very different because you're only playing on a 2-foot square table. I think we were actually may even have been playing on a smaller table. So very, very intense atmosphere and experience. Really, really interesting mechanics around how you interact with all the, for want of a better word, non-player characters that are also on the table. Which just created a very, very unique experience. Then after lunch, I had a game Through the Mud and the Blood with Alex Sotheran.
Oh, brilliant.
Which was great because, you kind of get the benefit of a history lecture at the same time as playing the game, because Alex is just so knowledgeable on the First World War. So that was brilliant. And then finally, I played a Chain of Command Crete game. And again, the amount of effort that Graham had put into actually creating the table, making his own map. Unfortunately for James, hello James, I did whip his ass and felt really, really quite bad afterwards about doing so, because it didn't seem very sporting in the context of a Lardy day.
Yeah.
But it was fantastic.
Great.
And listening to Richard Clark hold court as well is an experience in and of itself too.
It certainly is. Yeah. Yes, I can stand testimony to that after being in Airborne Ireland. So I that's fantastic to hear. And I mean, from my own perspective, I would echo all those comments, because that was exactly what I found when I traveled to the north of Yorkshire from here. That's the only Irishman visiting on the day. So I was hugely fortunate that I everything aligned from a work perspective and a home perspective, and I suppose a COVID perspective and it all, that I was able to travel over to North Yorkshire for John Savage's Airborne Lard in the middle of October. I flew over on the Friday afternoon, and John, was such an amazing host for the weekend, as well as being a great game host. But he picked me up and everything from the airport, and we travelled up to the game, and I got to play What a Cowboy that evening with a couple of drinks on board, along with my co-players who were imbibing in a few gin and tonics, which made the game absolutely cracking. There was, Joe, you'd be well versed in this. In fact, Joe, zero tactical acumen displayed by anyone. It was literally, it was like all guns blazing. It was like the Hunger Games with 6-shooters, Joe. It was absolutely some crack. I would suggest the amount of abuse off table was equally as bad as the amount of rounds shot down range on table. Like, but that was great crack. And in fairness to John, he had a few cutting quips at me during it, which just adds to the memories of it. But that was great crack. And then the following morning, I got to meet so many people who I'd been interacting with for the better part of like 18 months or 2 years, and I actually see them in the flesh. I met Alex and Rich and John and Jeremy and all that. Like it was absolutely Charlie. It was just brilliant. Like I was very fortunate I got to play Jeremy's Shattered Shields fantastical mix up of Chain of Command and Sharp Practice and Infamy and Ducks and everything else put together, and it just played brilliantly, and his opponents were great, absolutely nail biting, down to like one force morale point a piece on the very last roll of the dice, and sure enough we got stuffed at the end, like, but it was a brilliant game. And then in the afternoon I got to play Kiss Me Hardy, and I figured, given that I was the only non-English person in the room, that it would be fair of me to play the French fleet for the afternoon and not force anyone else to play the French on what I think was relatively close to Trafalgar weekend, I might have thought. So I volunteered to lead the forces of the Metrique into combat against the British fleet. And again, Charlie, what an amazing host. No different to Jeremy, like just brilliant crack. It was just brilliant. The game was super. The models looked amazing, and in fairness, all the tables were just, it's as good as you can get, really, in terms of what you can physically see on table. Just amazing. And then the hosts were fantastic, and all of like the people I was playing with, like they were just so sportsmanlike. They were all just here for the story. I genuinely felt all along through all the games, and this would be like a major thing for me when I'm playing a game. You're not really playing against someone, you're playing with them, like, and you're kind of writing that narrative, you're writing that story that you can tell afterwards over a few drinks, and that was really the case of it. And then I was lucky enough, because I stayed on a Saturday night as well, and people were traveling back, but my flight was late back on Sunday evening, so I actually got to play proper like infamy, like it, like not Lord of the Rings infamy, but actually Romans and Barbarians against Charlie with John, and hosting on that award-winning table that he had from Partisan, which is just, if people haven't seen the photographs of it, you just need to go and have a look, because it was amazing. And that was a brilliant game, like, because Charlie, had played 50 or 60 games, so he knew the Romans inside out. I had a little bit of help from John as the umpire, like, I got to smash Roman power in North Yorkshire for 100 years or more, and it was just absolutely brilliant. I came back and I think I ordered about 5 or 6 Ancients books from Osprey and a few other places that were recommended by people that were enabling this from left, right, and center. And I absolutely have Infamy Ancients on my projects list for 2022. So yeah, a brilliant chance to go and meet everyone in person. Amazing games to play, and then that atmosphere was just fantastic. Particularly because like never met any of these people in real life before, like, and then to be able to travel over, and it was like, of course I knew all these people, never met them in my life, except virtually, and then sit down and have a pint with them or whatever it was, and the amount of back and forth, a bit of banter and abuse was just brilliant. Like, it was really, really welcoming, even if I did take a massive amount of abuse for being the only Irish person there. But that was all taken in good faith. That said, gentlemen, leads us on to perhaps our final topic of conversation for this evening. Nicely, we have approximately 5 weeks to Christmas. Not that I want to talk about that particularly, but like, there is a large clock ticking loudly for the remaining part of 2021. And so in that sense, what, if I can ask, are the major hobby objectives left before we run out the clock in 2021 that you would like to maybe achieve? And then what do you think is going to loom large for the first part of 2022? So, Joseph, to you, sir.
Well, I think I'm going to, I'll finish my BEF bit thing. I have got some 21st Panzer Division things, a couple of things you got for my 40th for me. Very, very good of you. A couple of, those crazy French unique half tracks.
I only got those for you so that when we do get around to playing with them, I can play with Corporal Jones and put a P around.
Destroy them straight away.
That was it, man. That was it. That was the whole decision-making process.
Yeah, that's fine. It makes sense. And also, I took advantage of the Warlord 3-for-2 tank thing, and I was looking at it just before we came online. The 15 centimeter Lorraine Schlepper.
Lovely.
On the way, plus a Pershing, which I want, and also a Lux, Panzer II Lux. So it'll be little odd bits there and stuff. I've got a bunch of late war German stuff that like infantry sort of mixed stuff, like Volkssturm and Volksgrenadiers and like a Luftwaffe field division kind of thing, just to round out some bits there and stuff. So it'll be like odds and sods and things. In terms of next spring, I think I'm gonna. I'm undecided yet right now what sort of area to go for.
I'm not committing you to anything here now. I'm not taking notes now.
I feel the weight. I feel, recording this like, it's like a contract.
Consider this. You can consider this question like throwing out like a variety of options.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm intending to
better
get like
choice of words.
It's a good word. A shed built. That's the first thing, right? In the garden, entirely for storage of stuff. Because right now that's sort of forming a ceiling, a capacity ceiling on like changing, having more theaters and stuff. If that wasn't an issue, Berlin is ruin Berlin is a goal I want to do, right? So I've got some very nice kits kicking around. There's this company that I found that he had a Kickstarter, I think, this guy, and he made a couple of Berlin buildings and stuff, but I managed to track down his email address and he sold me a couple of the kits. They're very nice.
Sorry, Joe, are these in MDF?
Yeah, MDF kits. MDF kits. Although I'm going to add to them, I'm going to get Paul Edwards to print me some like fancy window surrounds and stuff that I can, fancy out. But Berlin stuff, and I've got some Sarissa kits to do up as Berlin sort of like tenement blocks and things and stuff. And I might also marry that with a Stalingrad sort of, we're doing like ruined city stuff. You sort of like just expand it, and you can sort of do a lot of ruined city things. I'm keen for that. I am also keen, and always in the sort of back of my head is doing like Egypt, Libya, sort of MTO kind of stuff, because you don't need that much terrain. The buildings aren't like, you're not building like a whole French town, so less stuff there. And I'm also always drawn to winter stuff, and doing a winter thing. And I think I would take the shortcut of like winterizing existing buildings with like acetate rooftops with snow on them, put on the existing roof. Whereas I would then still make winter hedges and stuff. But I wouldn't like like I haven't got the capacity to
Start
have my
from
whole
scratch.
terrain, my whole terrain set again, but
Okay.
in winter. I just, sort of go with it and stuff. But yeah, so I guess the most pressing thing would be, finish a few mini bits and stuff. And then if I was starting a new theatre, it would be Mediterranean, Africa kind of thing. Because that feels quite oh no, my jungle stuff. I forgot that. Actually, I need to finish that first. I've got 80% of a jungle thing done.
Okay.
I've got all the buildings done. I've got a couple of big bags of like aquarium plants and cheap stuff from China that I need to finish doing.
Right.
And I've got a whole Japanese army to paint. But apart from that, yeah. So, but that
apart from that,
but that actually is good. Actually, that's good because actually it's quite close to being done. That isn't. That's not a mile.
That would be like an easy win, right?
It would be, yeah. It would be actually. It would be. Paint up like 7 or 8 tanks and Japanese tanks and like 70 blokes and make, I don't know, maybe like 15, 20 like jungle
clumps,
terrain clump things, and then I've got the Pacific to go. I've got a full US Marine Army already painted up and stuff.
Okay.
So actually, that might be a more sensible first start into the new year.
Easy win.
Yeah.
On the road.
Yeah.
Build up
then I straight away have got a new theatre to do as well.
Okay.
And even nearer to home today, right? As we speak, right? This is the like hot off the press stuff.
Yeah.
This morning I had a 2 meter by 3 meter sheet of teddy bear fur delivered. By 1 o'clock, it was shaved, right, in a patchy way.
Is this going to be ready for Sunday?
That's the plan. I'm going to paint it tonight, right? That's the plan, right?
Man, when I said there was no pressure, like I was kind of joking. Like,
no, but you know what?
I up until 4 in the morning
to get this ready. Done. I've got these pots of paint I bought from B&Q.
Okay.
That sat by the back door for like a few months, sort of thing, because I couldn't find the right teddy fur. Okay. Not the right teddy fur. It's oatmeal, right? Short pile oatmeal, it's called, from Dalston Mills. So that's already been shaved. The dog trimmer.
Okay.
And big mess, a lot of mess.
Right. Yeah.
But so much mess.
But I'll make sure to compliment it accordingly on Sunday so that it can't right? Yeah, I will. I promise.
Big mess. But the goal is tonight, after we finish this, I'm gonna get the table out, the full 6x4, cover it in bin bags, cover the floor in bin bags,
right?
Get some gloves on and emulsion. And
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. You're not busy at all,
and on Sunday, you'll go, oh my gosh, where did you find this real grass? And I'll go, it's actually just shaved teddy bear fur. And you go, oh my gosh.
What was it? Oatmeal or something, was it? Oh, what was it?
Oatmeal, yeah. Dalston Mills, short pile oatmeal. Okay. $9.95 per meter.
Okay, noted. You should have said nothing, and then I would have been absolutely astounded on Sunday. But however, since you have mentioned it, I will make sure to actually compliment it down.
You were like, "What's this crap? Well, what's that crap on your table, Joe? Why is there all this like green fur?"
And you're going to cover half of it with the canal anyway.
Grass. You're like, it's crap.
Okay. Well, in any case, that is a very significant list of potential projects and easy wins, I would say. Yeah, okay, to be considered for next year. I look forward to coming back to you at the end of December to see the finalized list, and we'll hold you to that, inverted commas. Yeah, okay, for the first half of next year, Joe. Excellent. And Andrew, for yourself in the remaining couple of weeks now, what's gonna be the hobby focus?
Well, I think continuing into the new year as well. I mean, the lead mountain or the pile of untapped potential.
That's the best way of describing it.
Yeah,
it's excellent.
Things kind of float to the surface and then disappear below the waves again, never to be seen again.
Yeah.
So it's a case of whatever catches my eye at the time.
Okay.
So I would like to do some more 15mm AWI at some point next year. The AWI in sharp practice is just fantastic. Really, really good period to play. I want to make some more progress on my War Master stuff. I've got a significant orc army already that needs to be finished. But then that will just lead inevitably onto the elves as well that will then need to be done. So that's something. I recently bought Stargrave, which which I may or may not get into. I haven't decided yet, really. I'm a bit ambivalent about it. Despite what everybody says about it not being Frostgrave in space, it's Frostgrave in space. So I don't know what to do about that yet. We shall see. I've been playing a lot of Necromunda recently, second edition. So back in time again, and I'm under a certain amount of pressure to do a gang. So that might be an interesting distraction. And again, Necromunda is one of those games where the mechanisms within the game itself I think are pretty crap, but you've got all that lore and the grimdark and
atmosphere,
and it's all just super cool, and that far outweighs any shortcomings in the actual game itself, because you're playing in the Underhive and it's just cool. And also as well, the other thing, I've got 10mm North Vietnamese army and US army kicking around somewhere, and I was watching Little Wars TV's excellent Mekong Delta battle report. I don't know if you've seen that this week, and I'm all excited now about the potential to do some Vietnam stuff. But the only new project I think I might kick off is 28mm World War II.
Oh yes, we did see you dabbling with this online. There were purchases made.
So after having already done it in 6, 10 and 15mm, I thought, well, I might as well go for 28 and see what happens. And the only thing I can't really decide at the moment is whether I want to do the Eastern Front and the Russians or the Western Front. And I can't decide yet what I'm going to do.
Why not both?
This was about what I was about to say, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a binary. It's not a binary question. It's one of priorities, really. But no, I'm quite intrigued by the idea of how playing Chain of Command in a bigger scale will change the gaming experience. Because I think it would lend itself really well to very close, intense actions like house-to-house fighting in a Normandy village, for example, or street clearing in Stalingrad. I can really see itself lending itself to that really intense, confined style of game. Probably will really emphasize the role play elements of your big men and your individual figures, and really bring that to the fore. And as I say, I'm just really interested to see how it will differ from playing in 15mm.
Plenty to consider.
Lots to go at. What about yourself, Tom?
From my own perspective, it's about the crocodiles closest to the boat now for the next couple of weeks, right? So Joe, you're on this Sunday. I think I'm on the following weekend. Is that correct? So I have a couple of terrain pieces, small terrain pieces to complete for a reciprocal Chain of Command game. Not this weekend, but the following weekend that I'm hosting. So those are going to be on the desk within the next few days. I have looming like a monumental continental-sized iceberg out of the darkness, a battalion-level game of World War II bolt action that I am organizing, coordinating, facilitating on the 20th and 21st of December with 6 to 9 other people, obviously COVID depending, but it is a monster and a half. The main table is 6 foot wide by 16 foot long. That incorporates a full beach landing, kind of Utah-esque, with a full company of American infantry on landing at 28mm, full tank platoons, German defenses on the beach, 2 causeways, minefields, marshes, into the bocage and the farmsteads. Left of that table and adjoining the last 6 feet of it is another 6 foot by 4 foot table with a German artillery battery dug in a la Breacore, with a platoon of German grenadiers defending 4 guns, being assaulted by a company of American paratroopers. And then on the other wing of that table is another 6 foot by 4 foot table with a French village and a bridge in it being defended by Fallschirmjäger Platoon Plus and another company of Americans attacking it. And those are effectively 3 or 4 mini games that are all will be managed within the context of one much larger overall game. From my perspective, I have the various German companies done and all associated vehicles and stuff, but I actually have to finish up painting the trench, the 3D printed trench battery products for it. And it's not all my kit, I should admit. I'm providing a significant chunk of it in terms of both terrain, mats, and troops. But then the other elements of it are coming from various other persons. I should also note one of the chaps is actually building a 6 foot by 4 foot replica of Point the Hook with the height and the cliff and all the 9 yards of it and the gun batteries and all the rest of it. And that will be a separate table off to one side, but they're all interlinked. So there'll be batteries firing from table to table. So there's a bit of that. So that is, I suppose, the biggest, the most significant crocodile swimming towards the boat.
That's a pretty big crocodile.
Yeah, it's a bit of a monster, mate, to be honest with you. And I'm glad I just have 1 or 2 terrain pieces to do for it. So I'll get those done. I'll get a couple of bits done for the Chain of Command game next Saturday, Sunday week. And then I have 3 Titans. I have the War Master Heavy Battle Titan, I have a Psi Titan, and I have 1 more Warlord Titan that are, like Joe was kind of saying, 860 per, varying between 30 and 70% pre-complete. And I would like to get all 3 of those to the finishing line by the end of the year, along with those other couple of terrain projects. And then I plan to host maybe half a dozen or a dozen like Space Hulk games between now and Christmas as well. Post Christmas, haven't a clue. There are so many projects on the radar, I don't even know where to start. I have and would love to go back to my sharp practice French Napoleonics. Really want to go back to those. Got totally sidetracked and kind of want to go back to them. I have a Fallschirmjäger platoon, Joe, need to get done for other reasons and on other games that we've lined up. Chain of Command level. And then I have my smaller scale ventures, which to me has been another one of the major takeaways for this year, going from 28mm and just broadening that down to, in some cases, 10mm War Master. And Andrew, I'm looking at you smiling because I have Vampire Counts, I have Bretonians, I have High Elves, and I have Orcs that all need to be done. And then I have my 15mm Cold War stuff that I really want to do as well. So I haven't quite teased out what the running order of those will be. But they're all on the thing. And then clearly then I have a couple of other things that I would like to kind of at least purchase and put into the stockpile and kind of be complete. I'm a bit like Joe. I'm very much the completionist. I'll see a project or an idea and I'll be like, right, I'm going to amass all of that. And then I'll squirrel it away and I'll sit in it and I go, right, when I get a period of time and I need a break, I can just take that out and crack into it. So yeah, a couple of things. I say a couple of things. I have a load of things really to get through. And it's probably, a little bit excessive, but it is what it is. In any case, the immediate priority is a couple of terrain bits to do and then nail those 3 Titans as easy wins before Christmas and host a good couple of Space Hulk games and continue flying that standard as best I can. So that's kind of it, and I'm pretty sure it may be worth considering when we come back for the next episode 3 of Mentioned in Dispatches, what we've kind of laid out for ourselves over the course of 2022, and how we are cutting through it or not. So that's it, Andrew. I think that takes us to the end of episode 3. I think we've covered everything we set out to have I don't want to say brackets brief discussion on, but I think we're probably hitting the hour 15 mark or the hour and a half mark very easily, I think, which was fantastic, and it was a great discussion and great to see you both again across a virtual medium, at least now, hopefully in the flesh next year at some stage. But great to get back around the computer screen and have a chat and a cup of tea and to catch up. And I think hopefully if people are listening and they're thinking about, virtual gaming and in-person gaming. But I mean, from my own perspective, if they were to consider it and think and hopefully reach out to people and, engage with it and maybe, get a chance to play some games that they wouldn't necessarily other have the chance to do so. I think that would be my best takeaway from the overall discussion. It's a different and an excellent addition to wargaming, I think, and one that we'll hopefully keep going for the foreseeable future, if not into the very, very long term. And hopefully more people will get the chance to take away from it.
Oh, well, excellent. Well, cheers, Tom, for chairing tonight. Super job. Obviously, if you've listened to this point, please do like and subscribe to the channel. Be hugely appreciated. Obviously, Joe, this means that you'll be in the chair next time. I hope you're fully aware of the implications of this. The standards are very high now.
They are very high.
No pressure.
The salary is good. So
no pressure, Joe.
In complete change to my amateurish efforts, today's a bit excellent today. And it'd be great also, Tom, to hear how you get on with your big game as well next time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Really
Yeah.
Interested in that.
Yeah.
That sounds great. So look, thanks all very much for listening to this point. Have a lovely evening. And obviously, if we don't speak to you before Christmas, have a very good Christmas and New Year. And look forward to speaking to you all soon. Take care. Thank you very much.